However, continuing with the shiny materials theme, let's talk for a moment about the Peugeot Onyx GT. While we've covered Peugeot's various Le Mans efforts in other videos on the channel already, let's do just a brief recap for anybody who might have missed them. In the late 2000s, Peugeot was taking on the might of Audi at Le Mans with their exceptionally fine-looking 908 HDI LMP1, possibly my favorite Le Mans prototype of all time, kind of tied with the R18 e-tron Quattro. That would be a hard one to pick. Anyway, the 908 HDI FAP LMP1, which was powered by all of the letters in its name, as well as a big V12 twin-turbo diesel engine that brought them victory at La Sarthe in 2009. Come 2011, they had won everything except for Le Mans with the updated version of the car, simply called the 908 because the economy wasn't quite as healthy and they paid by the letter. And in 2012, they built a hybrid version of the car, the Hybrid 4, except they canceled that program shortly before the start of the season, just after the cars had arrived for testing at Sebring, and thus everyone on the team was disappointed and it never went racing. And Audi's new rival became Toyota and the TS030 for the 2012 season. But what if GT1 had survived as a class into the 2010s, particularly in its late 90s iteration where they were, not really GTs, they were just prototypes? Well, we got a glimpse of what Peugeot might have been running in our alt history Le Mans at the 2012 Paris Motor Show when they unveiled the Onyx Concept. Though this design was intended more in a road-going direction than a racing one, the mechanicals underneath were pretty much lifted straight from the 908 Hybrid, all dressed up in, well, a body that used what can only be called a very distinctive materials palette. The body combined carbon fiber, that's not that unusual, with hand-polished copper-gilded panels that were left uncoated, and thus intended to develop a natural patina over the time, which raised some eyebrows about the practicality of such an approach when it debuted. But this materials approach wasn't, entirely aesthetic, although it was pretty much just aesthetic. It was intended as a signal of Peugeot's interest in alternative, potentially more sustainable manufacturing techniques at a time when such considerations were becoming increasingly relevant, mostly to regulatory bodies, but also to some of the more mindful consumers. Let's quickly kick it over to James May to make some more sarcastic comments about the car.
Raw copper, which is an ideal material for making a car because it's very cheap, it is of course extremely strong, and it doesn't go green in the rain.
However, the Onyx's Le Mans connection was far more direct and less superficial. Its hybrid powertrain was directly derived from Peugeot's endurance racing program and paired a mid-mounted 3.7-liter V8 HDI diesel engine producing about 600 horsepower with an 80 horsepower electric motor generator that was integrated into the 6-speed sequential gearbox, all of which are mechanical gubbins that should sound perfectly familiar to those who recall the video on the Hybrid 4. The chassis was a carbon fiber monocoque with 12 individual components bonded together that weighed just over 100 kilos or 220 pounds, contributing to the car's claimed overall mass of 1,100 kilos or 2,425 pounds. Double wishbone suspension featured at all four corners with pushrod activated dampers, while the braking system utilized carbon composite discs with 6 piston calipers up front and 4 pots in the rear. The engine was a fully stressed member of the chassis, if I'm reading the French press release correctly, and the windscreen wasn't glass, but a plastic compound called, no, it wasn't called it was called some long polysyllabic chemical non-word. It's polymethyl methacrylate, which sounds tasty. Further evidence of the Concept Le Mans heritage, because, glass doesn't really go on Le Mans cars anymore. Aerodynamically, the Onyx featured a number of racing-derived elements, some of which were then taken a step further, including an aggressive front splitter, a flat underbody, a big rear diffuser, and a deployable rear wing, the latter of which, of course, being the taking it a step further because active aero has been frowned upon pretty much in every racing jurisdiction since the 80s and 90s. These features were developed with computational fluid dynamics and wind tunnel testing to optimize the car's downforce while minimizing the car's drag and giving us this rather fetching body style that we can see here. It also has slight elements of the, what was that coupe that made the RCZ? But, made much more aggressive and prototypey looking. The interior continued the sustainable materials theme with felt made from compressed recycled wool and newspaper wood, a material created from compressed recycled newspapers used for various interior panels and the dashboard respectively. While these specific materials would likely and hopefully have been replaced with more conventional, read fireproof, alternatives in a racing application, they did again reinforce Peugeot's conceptual approach to reducing one's environmental impact through unconventional material selection. The Onyx was, fundamentally, as we've seen, a fully operational racing prototype underneath, as the engine was actually in the car and did work, because I think, honestly, they probably just cannibalized one of the hybrid 4s that they had built and then not sent racing the prior year. It was capable of well more than 100 miles an hour, and in true racing prototype form, it required a heater to warm all the fluids up before it could even be started. Yes, seriously, the 908s that are now in private hands are usually covered with blankets between racing sessions to keep heat in the engines, as we can see here, looking at Mr. David Porter's lovely 908 HDI FAP at Sebring Historics in 2020. Which they've covered with some moving blankets that they bought at Harbor Freight. For those of you who don't have Harbor Freight, which is to say I think everybody outside of the US, it's kind of a discount hardware store, which is fantastic in its way, but you wouldn't really want to buy anything with a plug on it from them. But their moving blankets are excellent. Anyway, adaptation to racing spec would likely have taken away many of the more concept car-y elements like that newspaper wood dash and felt interior, but the mechanicals were ready to go pretty much out of the box, and I think the aesthetics would have been as well in a world where GT1 survived either instead of or adjacent to LMP1, which would mean that we might get to see something like this fantastic looking car going up against a diesel-powered R8C successor, maybe a Toyota TS030 that picked up a little bit more closely to where the GT1/TS020 had left off. What else? Oh, the Porsche 918 RSR, which I honestly forgot about when I started this list and now regret not including. And I mean, honestly, if we had seen GT1 kind of continue in more of a 90s vein until 2012, who knows where we would have ended up. I wouldn't have been at all surprised to see Pagani, maybe Koenigsegg get in on the action. It would have been a fantastic alternative history, but, maybe that's a video series in and of itself. Alternate racing history if, blank class hadn't gone away or if some specific event hadn't happened. Those, however, are thoughts for another day. Anyway, let's head back over to the Germans and what's arguably a rebadged successor to the Audi Avus, the Volkswagen W12.